Pastor, have you ever opened up your preaching calendar and thought, oh no, what am I going to preach this fall? That sinking feeling, that feeling of anxiety and stress, that's real. But the good news, it doesn't have to be that way. Today, I'm going to show you how to plan a fall sermon series calendar step by step. Hey, I'm Shawn. I know how fast fall sneaks up on you. You have back to school rhythms, you have football games, you have church events, and suddenly Thanksgiving and Christmas is staring you in the face. And if you're not intentional about planning, you end up piecing sermons together week by week, always scrambling, feeling that Saturday night anxiety and that Sunday morning panic. But that's not how God designed you to do ministry. So today, I want to walk you step by step through how to plan your fall sermon series calendar. Step number 1, start with your calendar. Grab a blank calendar. Whatever type of calendar you use, maybe you use Google Calendars on your laptop, on your computer, or maybe you're old school and you use paper calendars. Just grab your calendar, get it out. Let's take a look at it. On that calendar, mark the anchor dates. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. Those are anchor dates. And then put on your calendar church events. Maybe you're doing a revival. Maybe you're doing a fall festival or a mission Sunday, or your church has homecoming. Put those dates on your calendar as well. Those become your anchor dates. Those become the stakes in the ground that everything else is built around. For example, when we look at November and when we take a look, there's actually 4 Sundays. So why not do a 4-week gratitude series leading up to Thanksgiving? And when we look in December at Christmas, we got 3 weeks. So why not do a 3-week Christmas series? Proverbs 21:5 tells us the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. Planning isn't about control. It's about clarity for the people you shepherd. So I want to ask you a question, Pastor. Are you shaping your preaching with the calendar or letting the calendar shape you? So after you get your calendar out, the next thing you need to know is, what are your people's needs? You need to discern your people's needs. This is where pastoring comes in. Ask yourself, where is my people spiritually and emotionally this fall? Where are they struggling? What questions do they have? What issues are they wrestling with? You don't have to guess. You don't have to assume. Just ask. Ask a few church leaders. Ask some ministry leaders. Listen in when you attend small groups. Pay attention to hallway conversations. Sometimes the series you need is hiding in what they're already saying in the hallway. Paul gives a really good example of this in Acts chapter 17. When he went to Athens, he didn't just automatically stand up in front of people and just began to preach. But what he did, he went in, he sat down, he listened to people, he understood what they were asking, what questions they were wrestling with, and then he stood up and he presented the gospel in a way that met the people's needs because he knew where they really were. A pastor friend overheard in his hallways different young families, young parents just saying, hey, we are so busy. Our schedules are going in so many different directions. And as a family, we feel so disconnected. He heard that on several different occasions. So he prayed about it, and God led him to do a series around Deuteronomy chapter 6, and he called it Faith at Home. It wasn't flashy, but it was powerful because it was exactly what his people needed. So let me ask you this. Could your fall series already be sitting in the conversations you had this week. You have your calendar, you have your people's needs, and now we need to pick the themes. So choose your series themes. Now comes the dreaming, the brainstorming. This is where biblical depth meets real life relevance. When I plan sermon series, I would use a large dry erase board that I had attached on the wall, and I would split that dry erase board into two parts. On one part, it was completely blank. On the other part, I had the months. And on the part that was completely blank, my dream team, that's what I called them, we would sit down for 30 minutes and we would just throw out sermon series ideas. After the 30 minutes were up, we would take a look at the list, and any ideas that were similar, we combined them together. And then we came up with a final rough draft list. We took a picture of that, and over the next week, my dream team and I, we would pray over this. God, what do you want us to preach? What does your people need to hear? What do you want us to say? And then when we came back the next week, we fine-tuned, and we would put under this month, this was a series we were going to do, the sermon titles that we wanted to do. And this month, this was a series. This day, this was a one-off. And before we knew it, we had 3 to 6 months already planned. So for example, if I was doing that with you now, I would say, okay, let's look at October. October, you can do community and relationships. You can do a one another series, living as Christ's body, based on Romans chapter 12. In November, do a gratitude sermon series. Title it The Power of a Thankful Heart, based on 1 Thessalonians 5:18. In December, do an Advent or a Christmas series. Title it The Weary World Rejoices, based on Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. And then in January, do a New Beginnings series. Title it All Things New, based on Ephesians 4:22 through 24. So just come up with series ideas. But here's the key. When you come up with titles, make the titles sticky. Say that you're doing a Galatians series. Don't just call it the Galatians series. Come up with a title that's sticky and trusted. Living the gospel we've been given, or something like that. Because here's the question. What if your series title was the very hook that God wanted to use to draw someone to church this fall? If this is where you get stuck, that's exactly why I created the S3 Sermon Idea Generator. It gives you fresh, biblical, creative sermon ideas so you don't sit there and stare at a blank screen. I'll link that free tool below. So we have our calendar, we have our people's needs, we have our themes. Now we need to meet with our team. You need to coordinate with your team. Here's a ministry tip. Don't keep your plan in your mind. Share it. Create a planning team. Invite your worship leader, your communications director, your sound technician, your props coordinator. Talk with anyone shaping Sundays. If your series is light in the darkness, maybe worship leans into songs about Christ, our light. Maybe the media creates visuals around the theme of light. Maybe the communications director creates a logo, a graphic about light on an invite card that you pass out 2 weeks before the series begins. These invite cards are what they give to their friends and family to invite them to the upcoming sermon series. When your whole team pulls in the same direction, people just don't hear the truth. They experience the truth. Pastor, let me ask you this. Are your Sundays coordinated or thrown together at the last minute? So we talked about your calendar. We talked about your people's needs. We talked about creating themes. We talked about your team. Now, the final step to this is to leave room for the Holy Spirit. Here's the balance. You need to plan thoroughly, but hold it loosely. God may lead you to pause a series if your community faces a crisis. He may nudge you to address a cultural moment. Planning isn't boxing the Spirit in, it's setting rails so you can pivot without panicking. I like to think of it this way. You and I lay the rails, but the Holy Spirit drives the train. James chapter 4, verse 15 says, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Planning serves you. It doesn't master you. But let me ask you this. What if your most spirit-filled sermon this fall is the one you didn't plan, but the one that you had margin to take a detour when the Holy Spirit directed? So what are the steps in planning a fall sermon series calendar? Number 1, start with your calendar. Number 2, discern your people's needs. Number 3, choose your series themes. Number 4, coordinate with your team. And number 5, leave room for the Spirit. Pastor, you don't have to live in sermon chaos. God gives you wisdom to plan and His Spirit to guide. And if you need help, I've linked a few free resources for you. Sermon templates, a coaching call, the S3 sermon idea generator I mentioned earlier. I think you'll find these things game changers for your planning sessions. And remember, planning isn't about control. It's about creating space for God to move among His people, and He will move. I invite you to watch this video next, where I tell you about the 4 techniques I learned that make preaching easier.